What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin.
And we have an album review for you. And honestly, a band I didn't expect to be talking about just because of, stuff I'll get into. We are going to go over the latest offering from Nachtmystium, Blight Privilege. This also comes out on the 1st of November on Lupus Lounge Records. This band formed in 2000 in Illinois, and then I believe they moved to California later. This is their 9th album, and I say "their" with like kind of an accent because it's essentially attached to one person, which I'll get into him in a moment. This is their first album in 6 years. Actually, their first album since breaking up again, and then reforming in 2020. I got into this band with their album Black Metal Part 1, Assassins. I absolutely loved that. It was a really interesting mix of black metal and psychedelic stuff. I also really liked the Part 2 Addicts as well. And I guess you could call this band like psychedelic atmospheric black metal. And well, I'll get more into that, but first we're going to turn over to Jammin John here.
Yeah, so surprise, surprise, once again, I sound like a broken record. I've never heard of this band. I think I may have read something at some point. It wasn't necessarily a glowing review, and we'll get to that. One of the joys of Thralls of Metal, at least for you guys too, is that you find new music, and that's been a huge thing for me over the last 6 years in this channel, is finding new music like this that I've never heard.
So yeah, the story with this band is one wrought with controversy. In terms of black metal, when you bring up the name Blake Judd, generally that conjures up, phrases like, oh my god, that fucker still owes me money and merch. There was this whole thing that went down with the band years ago, back in 2013, where Blake was essentially fleecing his fans. People were making pre-orders for music, merch, etc., and he was just pocketing the money, and he got in a lot of trouble for it. Censoring Media ended up dropping them, and he has since apologized for those actions, and I think he said he was going to make good on that. I don't know if that was like a PR damage control thing.
Probably.
Or he actually did. I don't know. I really didn't follow up on it. All I knew was people were really mad at him. Now, when it came down to the whole grift thing, I did get the album that was associated with it, The World We Left Behind, and I got that at a record store because, well, that was kind of the only way I was sure I was going to get it, judging by the news. And honestly, I was really not much of a fan of that album. It felt like it was just kind of lazy in comparison to previous efforts, especially when they gained a lot of acclaim. But when I saw that this band, and, well, I mean, by extension, Blake Judd, because he is kind of the band, had resurfaced, I was like, man, I wonder how welcome his return will be.
Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's pretty much what it all boils down to.
And by prizes, I mean other people's money and not giving them anything in return.
Nonetheless, we have this album. A dark, fairly dreary at times, melancholy, cold, icy, heavily layered, dense batch of music.
Basically, this definitely does sound like Nachtmystium. I wouldn't say it's as creative as Black Metal Part 1, Assassins, but I think that's kind of like a high watermark in terms of their career. Like, that is probably their most lauded album. But this does sound really good, and I'm not dogging this album right out of the gate, but I do want to say that Ken Sorceron did the production on here, and actually he plays bass on here, and he did a great job. Mm-hmm. This is layered with lush melodies. The drums sound really good. It's just mixed really well, and it has this very just huge sprawling sound. And atmosphere, of course, is a huge thing with this band. The opening track, Survivor's Remorse, is cleverly pockmarked with samples, and it sounds like newsreel stuff, and not pleasant news, like earthquakes, fires, war, people talking about people killing each other, which is kind of perfect for black metal anyway, but that kind of feeds into the distant cold riffs, the blast beats, the very cavernous blackened shrieks. The whole album kind of just plays off of atmosphere and layering, and there's a lot of really cool guitar layering on here. Mm-hmm. They are multi-tracked to death on here, but to a great effect. Like, every tremolo riff comes along with many tremolo harmony companions, and lots of lavish lead work underneath. It's very driving sounding, like a lot of blast beats, a lot of good heavy grooves, and just kind of a dense, cold atmosphere that is surprisingly melodic. There's a lot of atmosphere to this, like a lot of stuff that kind of reminds me a bit of, stuff that Alcest would do.
A lot of that melody is in partisan to the fact that there's always a constant lead melody going on underneath all of these songs, with the exception of a dropout transition in the opening track, Survivor's Remorse. That lead melody never stops. And then when you have the synths on top of that, or a different riff going on, like a lot of the melodies lead into harmonies and they just all kind of mush together, there's always something going on.
Yeah, it's very dense and very lush sounding, but it's well mixed. Like everything's separated very clearly. Like the drums don't sound muddy at all. The bass is very audible. The whole album sounds really good. And, as the album went on, it definitely, kind of like opened up a little bit. Riff work is kind of like the big thing with this band. Like that was my initial appeal where, it's definitely black metal, but there was like a lot of like non-traditional elements. Like, Black Metal Part 1 definitely had stuff that was like almost kind of like Pink Floyd-esque on there. And this album includes some interesting dives into, I wouldn't say it's like completely unfamiliar territory for him, but, stuff that is a little bit outside of the box as far as black metal, like Slow Decay and Blight Privilege. There's like country or bluegrass
something,
or western stuff, especially in Slow Decay. Like there are slide guitars, there's like acoustic, it might be steel guitars. Like it just has that sort of tone to it, but that is constantly playing off of like black metal tremolos to the point where like they're kind of like counter melodies. Sometimes they really line up to create these really cool harmonies. Other times they are playing, like, again, very different styles of guitar, but kind of combining them together.
And the drum work has something to say about that too. On songs like Blind Spot and again the title track, there is a country two-step D beat, like it bum 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 ba bum bum. It's weird. I didn't expect that, but it also brings a pretty entertaining flourish to a genre that I don't hear that in.
Yeah, honestly, it was like a square dance moment in there, like, except everyone's in corpse paint. But it was an interesting wrinkle rhythmically, because a lot of this kind of sticks to, blast beats, D beats. Conquistador and Blind Spot are, definitely more D beat driven. But hearing that, like, interesting little transition and then those added, like, kind of countryish melodies made for, like, a really interesting, engaging song. Like, kind of reminded me a bit of, like, Wayfarer, albeit, like, not as, like, progressive, I would say. Like Wayfarer, I would say, definitely has some stuff that sounds a lot like Opeth. This is a little bit more straightforward to the point where, there's not a lot of transitions where they change the grooves very much. Like this kind of locks on D beats and blast beats for the most part. You do have like some groovier moments, but they're mostly like set up like The Arduous March is a little bit more mid-tempo, sullen, dreary. It sounds very cold, very icy, very Norwegian, even though they're from Illinois.
Yeah, that shocked me. I didn't actually know. I didn't look it up, and I should have. This sounds like something that would have come out of Norway or Sweden or something. This definitely did not sound like a bunch of dudes from Illinois. There is one really standout, pretty solid Jammin track, Blind Spot. That's got a lot going on in it. In fact, to me, that flowed more like a prog song than it did anything else that's on this record. Like the transitions are solid. They lead into not only different time signature dynamics, but different groovy pockets, and the beautiful lush guitar solos that are on there are pretty awesome. It's definitely a standout track on this whole record.
It also brings some serious riffage too, which, a lot of this is, very droning, very atmospheric. That's definitely good mood setting, but I like hearing good riffs every now and then. And this song with its like transitions and again like slightly more proggy flourishes kind of reminded me more of Enslaved, like something around like Isa. And there are some like really clever, catchy riffs on here. Predator Phoenix, which I believe was the lead-off single with a video that was interesting to watch since it was just images of Blake and then showing all the various news articles about what a shithead he's been. I don't know, like it doesn't feel like a very apologetic single. Either way, it's got a good, like, repeated, kind of, like, straightforward rock riff on it. And there's, like, some good, like, classic heavy metal harmonies scattered on here, too. The melodies aren't always, like, dark and sinister, even though Blake's vocal delivery really doesn't change in here. He sounds grim throughout the entire album. But hearing, like, some, like, good, solid riffs every now and then kind of broke up a little bit of the monotony, which is kind of an issue on here. While I really like a lot of their earlier stuff, again, namely Black Metal Part 1, I feel like a lot of this kind of hangs out in a very safe space for, what Blink does. Like, this kind of just latches on to the atmosphere and kind of drones on. Like, namely the opening track on here, it's the longest track on the album, and there are maybe 3 different parts to it. It drones on the same melody and the same blast pattern for a long time, and then the other part, it kind of just switches up to like a double time section and, these haunting synth patterns. And it kind of just, lays on the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. And granted, it drones on a really good, lick. Like, I think the riff itself is melodic. There's good dissonant melodies in there, but it hangs out way too long. It doesn't really do enough in my mind to justify an over 7-minute runtime for that opening track.
It's catchy because it has to be. They take that riff and ram it down your throat for 7 minutes. Even though there's a change, it doesn't change the melody. Like, they never really deviate off that melody. The same could be said for Predator Phoenix, I think. It's just verse chorus, and that's the only really thing going on there. They drone on the riffs in there for entirely too long as well.
I got a bit of that on Conquistador as well. It was nice to hear like kind of a fun, crusty D beat in there. And the melodies are lush, they're haunting. There's like, a bit of a break in terms of like the D beats. Like, you get a double time D beat that's slightly different. There's a couple of sections of blasts, and I kind of like the fact that the choruses were a little bit different. Like, the second chorus included some different melodies that sounded a little bit more haunting and woeful, but it kind of just drones on these melodies. And again, the thing that I really liked about Nachtmystium was those like kind of like non-traditional elements and kind of, I don't know, like branching out in the songwriting. Here, it feels kind of safe and, a little stock at times. Like the Arduous March, well, it's probably one of the darker tracks on here. Like, it sounds very brooding. It starts off slow, mid-tempo. Like, I don't know, it could be like the start to like any Satyricon song or Immortal song. But it kind of just hangs out too long there, and it really doesn't do enough with the riffs to kind of like give them a little bit more character. As the song goes on, it gets a little bit more interesting, but it kind of drags. And I feel like that's a good chunk of this album is needlessly drawn out parts. Like, this is like watching a movie with way too much exposition and not enough stuff that moves the story forward. Like an 1.5-hour movie stretched out to a fucking 6-part miniseries with like just boring dialogue. That was kind of the issue in here. Again, it's got its fun moments, and he's clearly, really good at melodic hooks and, dense atmosphere and tremolos and, all that stuff. It's just, this feels like a very safe release that is just padded for length. The title track, well, it does drone on forever. In fact, the chorus refrain at the end feels like it lasted about 3 weeks. I do like the fact that it kind of has that, kind of country 2-step to it, that square dance thing. And in my head, I was trying to sync up the theme to Rawhide to it.
Which you can do.
It kind of works. But, you have to do it with, like, grim, cold vocals.
And outside all that, one thing I will say, too, is the lead work is really solid. It needs to come up a little bit in the mix because of how the guitars are constantly moving and there is a constant lead melody. When they get to an actual lead, it tends to be a little bit buried. Now, I realize, once again, that's a black metal trope, but they're really, really good leads. They do stand out. You gotta kind of listen for them. Blind Spot actually has 2 leads in it, and the first lead is really good, and the second one is beautiful and smooth and lush and really fits the soundscape, so I won't knock it there. However, overall, I'm going to give this record 3 stars. For me, personally, it drags. While there are dynamic shifts in some songs, it can take a little while to get there. And then once it gets there, the payoff isn't always necessarily the greatest. The drum work in here is really solid. I do like it. The guy is, for the most part, fairly straightforward. Loves his D beats, loves his occasional blasts, but the cymbal accents are solid. And the dynamic shifts, again, in Blind Spot, there's a lot of really good stuff in there. But overall, like, it just kind of drug. Like, for me personally, this wasn't necessarily for me. Like, I need to see a little bit more in my black metal, some darker tremolos, some more riffy sections, and while a few of the riffs in here were solid, it just wasn't my bag. If you're into other black metal bands, that I'm sure Nick will tell you, check this out for yourself.
I'm also at a 3. Like, I think this is good. It's just very safe and, again, like, kind of needlessly drawn out. where he does step outside of the, standard songwriting tropes, I think it's got like a lot of potential, like Slow Decay and Blind Spot. Hell, even Predator Phoenix, which I kind of dug that song. Granted, it is repetitive. It kind of reminded me more of one of the eras of Tribulation. I think like the last two albums, not counting the new one. Like, it kind of has that vibe, like, those, like, slightly more, like, rock riffs in there. I just think that he kind of just played it safe on this one. And played it safe for an extended amount of time in some of these songs. Like, again, it just kind of gets dull, despite the melodies being very solid. Like, this has great hooks on it and great atmosphere. It just gets to be a little monotonous at a point. And, yeah, like, I kind of hit my quota of like drawn out tremolo and blast sections with like lush atmosphere after a while. Like, yeah, even a good thing if it lasts too long. Like, you know what? Kind of done here.
Yeah.
Still, honestly, if you're a longtime Nachtmystium fan and Blake didn't ruin that for you, yeah, I'd still say check it out. It's pretty decent. I mean, it also has a lot of second wave tropes. There's definitely some stuff that reminds me, a bit of Tribulation a bit, and of course like some second wave black metal, Satiricon, maybe like a little bit of Dark Throne. Take your pick. Norwegian bands, like, it's definitely still rooted there. But yeah, this is decent. Check it out if Blake doesn't piss you off or owe you money. I don't know. Who knows? It's still kind of wide open there. But yeah, give it a listen. So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also now offer memberships. They are only 99 cents, and we will be doing some members-only live streams here soon, now that the release schedule is starting to slow down a bit. We also offer a Booger Troll, which it's the thing we offer. It's our mascot, it's our token emoji, and there will probably be more, because we have a bunch of booger trolls. Anyway, this is the new way to support the channel a little bit more directly. We're trying to get away from Patreon. That and StreamYard is raising their prices. And yeah, this kind of helps us out there. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, t-shirts, hats, all that. And if you'd like to help out by getting a shirt or a hat or just joining the channel, we would greatly appreciate it.
But you don't have to. We're actually just thankful that you're here. We appreciate all of our subscribers, all of our fans, all of our family and friends that support us. Just you guys being here means the world to us. Tons of content coming your way, album reviews, discography rankings, a whole bunch of segments, some live streams, Nick's Never-Ending Collection updates, just a ton of stuff. We do it all for you because we appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule, and we're probably going to do another giveaway because we are on the precipice of hitting 20,000 subscribers. Your irresponsible subscribing to this channel has brought us to this point.
Yep.
Absolutely crazy. But yeah, I definitely want to do something for that because that's kind of a landmark.
That's pretty monumental.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. But yeah, tons of content coming your way, and yeah, we are still forever thankful, and I will keep you guys posted as to the giveaway thing. But yeah, thank you once again, and we will catch you later.